which is a lot of things that are almost.
Didn't Daniel bow down and begin to worship him? And he didn't reject his worship,
I don't
which
know. I don't know if Daniel actually, and I could be wrong. You know what I mean? I don't remember. I'll put it this way: I don't recall Daniel actually bowing down to worship. I remember Daniel visitation, and I mean brief visitation. Daniel's visions of angels occurred in the New Testament, and people shuddered.
mhm.
I mean, literally almost collapsed. So if you can imagine being in that presence in this long dissertation of speaking and telling you things that you know factually are coming and it's all a vision, I, I don't even know what that would even be like or feel like. But I would not reject what you're saying far as um, the incarnate the incarnate Christ because it is clear in Scripture that that's why I said it's like a dual situation that's happening because there are those who believe absolutely. There are great theologians who believe that. There are those who believe absolutely. There are great theologians who believe that it is some of this is part of the incarnate Christ. Uh, you know, prior to quite naturally him coming in full flesh, but what? As a matter of fact, they actually uh, uh, I even put in my notes they called it Christophany, which yeah. So we know that that particular situation is where it's like his spirit, his form is there, um, and again that's why that description that I made reference to that is in Daniel can also be found in chapter 1 in Revelations. So that's something you can easily look up and see how both are really close in the description of Christ. And that's why it will lead people to believe that it could be. But it also, we see that definitely Gabriel and Michael both are named in Daniel. So we see that for sure. And that's why the thought is that Gabriel now has accompanied Michael in all of this to deal with these things. So again, I'm giving you what the studies of many have culminated to come together with an understanding of this. And even some of them actually say that, you know, you can't be definite because and you'll see again where Daniel himself says, I don't understand. But then there's the explanation that is given by the angel. And that's where we'll get into that whole dissertation when we look at chapter 11. Um, let's see here. The belief that angels going to carry. Yep, I got that one. And then, yeah, and I just wanted to repeat the fact that we know that the guardian angel, that Michael is actually the guardian angel of Israel. And he's often depicted as a warrior, and you could look that up in Revelation chapter 12, where you'll see where he is literally engaged in war. So that's why he gets that reputation. We also know that Gabriel is actually a messenger of God because we can see that in Daniel, because we saw he was given the message. We can see it in Zechariah, and we can see it in all four of the Gospels, where, remember, because Gabriel was the one who came to Mary and gave the message, and he also went to Elizabeth, yeah, to give the message. So we know he's a messenger of God. Both very powerful beings. Why? Because they're the ones that we see that are actually named that come in Scripture, who come to war and to give message. So when we see that, this is powerful to actually even see the description of it. So now what we're going to get into here is the angel Gabriel is now speaking, okay? And he's speaking in chapter 11. Let me ask this at this point. Do we have any questions, any thoughts? Everybody good? Okay. Because what I'm going to do is we're going to read through 11, 11 verse 2 through 6. And at that point, I'll try to give us some information on it because what happens is it begins to be redundant because it continues to go back and forth about these warring nations, and I'll talk to you all about that and after we get some of this reading done. So if somebody wants to go ahead and grab chapter 11, 2 through 6. We're going to take big chunks because we're going to try to finish all this up tonight.
I'll take it. And oh,
No, it's no problem.
2. Okay. Now then, I tell you the truth. 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and then a 4th, who will be far richer than all the others. When he has gained power by his wealth, he will stir up against the kingdom of Greece. Then a mighty king will arise who will rule with great power and do as he pleases. After he has arisen, his empire will be broken up and parceled out toward the four winds of heaven. It will not go to his descendants, nor will it have the power he exercised, because his empire will be uprooted and given to others. The king of the south will become strong, but one of his commanders will become even stronger than he and will rule his kingdom with great power. 6 also, Pastor.
Yeah, let's do 6 too. Yep.
After some years, they will become allies. The daughter of the king of the south will go to the king of the north to make an alliance, but she will not retain her power, and he and his power will not last. In those days, she will be betrayed together with her royal escort and her father, and the one who supported her.
Yeah. So there's a lot happening here, okay? Let me just give us a brief rundown because we have a lot of ground to cover. And like I said, a lot becomes a little bit, and I hate to even use the term redundant only because it's important to understand the shifts of power that's taking place. So I'm just going to try to be brief on some of this. The 3 kings that come to power in Persia after Cyrus, or say you have the one who fought the battle of, anybody want to guess? Thermopylae. Yep. There you go. You got it, Kanita. Yeah. Thermopylae. And if you want to tie that in to help you a little bit, we know the legendary story of the Spartans. Okay? So that's the battle that this is speaking of. Xerxes was the Persian king. He's fighting against the Greeks. Okay? The Greeks were represented at that time by, they were fighting in Thermopylae. The Greeks were in combat strength, but they did defeat them, the Spartans. But Greece eventually did win the battle. So what you had, or I should say the war. So what you had was Persia being in power, and they wound up basically losing. And again, we know that it was the leader of that was King Leonidas, who led them into battle against Xerxes, who was the Persian king. And what I like so much about this is what we're reading here at that time when this was happening to Daniel. This was not history. This was future coming. None of this was history. What we're reading now is history. I mean, years and years old of history. We're seeing stuff that we're reading now that we learned when we were in high school, some of these things. And if you took any kind of classes, whether you went to college and took any kind of biblical classes, these are things that were taught. This is not something that we're reading at the time. This is stuff that Daniel is literally reciting and writing down, keeping a record of all this stuff that was told to him. And then now all of a sudden, we see it years, thousands of years later, that, man, this actually transpired and took place. Read and say, this already happened. That's the beauty of the Bible. And that's why, like I said, I didn't want to call it redundant, because we need to understand and see that these things are very much so factual. And then what would transpire is out of that is that the Greek army, which we know that Alexander the Great would be the conqueror. He would expand the Greek landmass, and just he conquered so much of all the regions around. But what took place, as we know, we read it earlier in the prophecies, was that when Alexander died, he died at a very young age. I think he was only like 30. We see this terminology of the southern kingdom is actually Egypt, and the northern kingdom is Syria. Okay, so we're going to see even that included in. Now, think with me for a second, because this is where things can get really, interesting. When we see pictures, movies that are made, everybody speaking in the King James, thee, thou, thus, though, it's not so. It's not so. And people are all of one persuasion. It is not so. We have to understand, this is why it's so imperative for us to grab hold of what the truth and what is being taught from Scripture. These are various different people groups, different languages that are important players in Scripture. And when we see that, and because that's where we'll cover all of that, but all this is spoken of in the end times. And that's what baffles my mind sometimes when we think, which I think he was Jehovah's Witness. Yeah, and she's telling me that surely this administration, we're all, this is the end times. I said, listen, here's what I want you to do. When this administration leaves office, I want you to come back and I'll tell you, then we can have this conversation, because I'm going to tell you, this is not the end times. Because we're not going to be able to hasten God's hand in any of this. No nation is going to hasten God's hand. God's timing will be God's timing. And saying these things, I'm like, because you don't like a president, or you don't like what, I mean, how do you come up with this stuff? There have been so many wicked rulers and throughout time. I mean, everybody could describe that. So what we have to do is look at it from the perspective of what is God's word actually teaching. Doesn't mean we have to like any administration or whatever, or even politics. But we can't, when we start mixing that and trying to come up with a timeline for the return of God, that's bad theology. So I just wanted to throw that out there so we have a good understanding of that. But again, I wanted us to understand that when we see the terminology of the kingdom of the north, that's Egypt, and the kingdom of the south is Syria. I got that straight. So I'm sorry, reverse that. The kingdom of the south is Egypt. The kingdom of the north is Syria. And what we have here is there's going to be a lot of bitterness. And the reason why I'm doing a lot of talking is because I'm trying to save us, because it's a lot of reading, and I'm trying to surmise this so we can finish up. But what you have here is a back and forth of power. Kingdom of the north, you'll see them conquer. They turn around and get retribution in the kingdom of the south. You'll see them conquer. And what they would do is these guys would even take their daughters to marry the kings. Like you'll see when you read it yourself. They'll take the kings, the daughters of a king, and they'll take her and marry into the enemy's family. And that's why you did what we just read, where basically what happened was, in some cases, the wife, the former wife, and again, that's what I so appreciate about the history. It is so rich in Daniel, and we don't want to take it for granted, just read through and say, I don't understand it. It's just, no, we can understand this. We can gain facts out of this and strengthen our thought and our belief in all that the Bible.
One from her family line will arise and take her place. He will leave the king of the north alone. Then the king of the north will invade the realm of the king of the south, but will retreat to his own country. His sons will prepare for war and assemble a great army, which will sweep on like an irresistible flood and carry the battle as far as his fortress. Then the king of the south will march out in a rage and fight against the king of the north, who will arise a large army, but it will be defeated. When the army is carried off, the king of the south will be filled with pride and will slaughter many thousands, yet he will not remain triumphant. For the king of the north will muster another army larger than the first, and after several years, he will advance with a huge army fully equipped.
See? You see what's happening? It's back and forth. Yeah. It's so back and forth, and it's all about power. It's all about a power struggle. We gotta conquer. We gotta take over, and it's Syria and Egypt constantly back and forth fighting over territory, and they're doing everything they can. There's I'll give you my daughter. Okay, I'll take her, and you take my daughter, and we're all good. Everybody's good now. And then all of a sudden something doesn't work out. They're back fighting again. And this is all the things these are things that in our lifetime have already transpired, okay? But we're coming to a piece where the angel, and I need you to understand, all that we're reading is Gabriel speaking. We got that, right? This is not Daniel telling us what's happening. This is Gabriel telling Daniel what's going to happen. Okay? That's what's so, again, exciting about this. So let's go ahead and just jump. Let's go. Let's go 14 through 20. Anybody, everybody, anybody.
I'll read it.
Yep.
Now in those times many shall rise up against the king of the south. Also valiant men of people shall exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision, but they shall fall. So the king of the north shall come and build a siege mound and take a fortified city. And the forces of the south shall not withstand him. Even his choice troops shall.
Can you go all the way down to 20?
Yep. Oh, he shall. I'm sorry, y'all.
17. Yep, verse 17.
He will determine to come with the might of his entire kingdom and will make an alliance with the king of the south. And he will give him a daughter in marriage in order to overthrow the kingdom, but his plans will not succeed or help him. Then he will turn his attention to the coastlands and will take many of them, but a commander will turn his insolence back on him. After this, he will turn back toward the fortress of his own country, but will stumble and fall, to be seen no more. His successor will send out a tax collector to maintain the royal splendor. In a few years, however, he will be destroyed, yet not in anger or in battle.
Okay, so what we have here is like we're starting to get into now where it's going to be spoken of some of the biblical things that are going to be taking place for the future. Like when we go back to verse 16, it says, the invader will do as he pleases. No one will be able to stand against him. He will establish himself in the what? Beautiful land, which we know. What's the beautiful land? Come on, y'all. Beautiful land. It's Israel. Yep, the beautiful land is Israel. Whenever we see the beautiful land, it's always going to refer to Israel, okay? So we know that. He says that he's literally going to take hold of the beautiful land, he says, and he will have the power to destroy it, okay? He will have the power to destroy it. So again, we're still talking about these two kingdoms, the north and the south, which we're talking about Syria and Egypt, and they're battling and warring back and forth, and, you know, each one is getting more and more powerful. And what you have to understand, this definition and the defining of this is not saying that it's one king against this one king. These are kingdoms because kings perish. You understand me? And another king arises, but it's still the war waging. You got me? So we're not talking about one single king north and one single king south that has done all this continually. No, one has died, another one comes in. And we just saw again another case, as we just read, of, here, take my daughter. You see what I'm saying? We just saw that. That's the second time. Here, take my daughter, and okay, yeah, we got her, and we're all peace, we're all good. And no, I need more. Okay? Power is what I'm looking for, more and more. And now what you have is this brutality that is going to come, that's coming upon Israel. And that's why he says here, he says, he will establish himself in a beautiful land and will have the power to destroy it, okay? So we see that taking place. And this will bring us to the point of talking about the end times. And let's just go ahead and start reading this, because this begins to get very interesting. 21 through 28. Let's rock and roll. Somebody give me 21 through 28.
And in his place shall arise a vile person, to whom they will not give the honor of royalty, but, he shall come in peaceably and seize the kingdom by intrigue. With the force of a flood, they shall be swept away from before him and be broken, and also prince of the covenant. And after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, for he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. He shall enter peaceably, even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, spoil, and riches, and shall devise his plan against the stronghold, but only for a time. He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to the battle with a very great and mighty army, but he shall not stand, for they shall devise plans against him. Yes, those who eat of the portion of his delicacies shall destroy him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. Both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil, and they shall speak lies at the same table, but it shall not prosper. For the end will still be at the appointed time. While returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant, so he shall do damage and return to his own land.
Yeah. So this is brutality. I mean, again, this is factions of war back and forth. And the thing of it is, now I want you to just pay attention to this one particular piece here in the beginning. It says, he will be succeeded by okay, I'm sorry. I got it. I wrote it here. Okay. He will be succeeded by a contemptible person who has not been given honor and of royalty. So basically what it's telling us here is that that person is not somebody that's coming from bloodline. You got me? That person's not coming from a popular, like how we have in England, you got to be blood. And even back in the old days, you see where it would be Darius the first, the second, or it would be, you'd have the lineage would be passed down through the Sadducees and all that. This person's coming, no bloodline. Okay, this is a whole different type person that's coming here. There's no lineage of greatness or anything, but he becomes powerful. But here's the thing: the kicker is when we read that last part, what takes place is that the people who are even sitting at his table eating with him betray him. The very people that you sitting there looking across the table, you got my back? I got you. Oh, I got you. Okay. That's what's transpiring here. But you see the evil and the wickedness that he comes because he's coming in, he's taking all the plunder, the spoils, everything. So we see that these things are cranking up. So let's go ahead and somebody catch 29 through 35.
At the
29
appointed
through 35.
time, he will invade the south again. But this time, the outcome will be different from what it was before. Ships of the western coastline will oppose him, and he will lose heart. Then he will turn back and vent his fury against the Holy Covenant. He will return and show favor to those who forsake the Holy Covenant. His armed forces will rise to desecrate the temple fortress and abolish the daily sacrifice. Then he will set up the abomination that causes desolation. With flattery, he will corrupt those who have violated the covenant. But the people who know their God will firmly resist him. Those who are wise will insist and instruct many. Those that are at time will fall by the sword or be burned, captured, or plundered. When they fall, they will receive little help, and many who are not sincere will join them. Some of the wise will stumble, so that they may be refined, purified, and made spotless until the time of the end, for it will become at the appointed time.
Wow. You see what this is heading toward, right? You understand this is talking about absolute end times. Absolutely. Yes, indeed. You're right on point with that. Yep, right on point with that, Kenite. That's exactly what this is. And you're going to see it even gets even more explicit. And he's talking about the tribulation. And what I found fascinating in this is that when we go back to verse 30, when it says, the ships of the western coastland will oppose him. This is the first mention of a Navy fleet. So think about this, man. We're always thinking in terms of ground soldiers. So, just the fact that there's this coastal fleet of Navy that literally pushes him back. A resistance comes from the ocean. And so it shows you that the capability of war and the machines of war and how they were even ready back then is amazing to me. You know, because it's oftentimes that we think in terms of horses and chariots, but do you understand that there were even biblical times in Jerusalem and other places where horses and chariots were not there? They were not a form of fighting. Literally, it was sword and spear. It wasn't horses. Horses were introduced into battle in various times as time grew. But now we see this whole situation of ships from the western coast, talking about how it will oppose them. And again, this is the first mention of a really strong naval force. And when we read on, it says, and he will lose heart, because he's probably never been confronted or had to face that. Because all these people, you're used to people coming in on a landmass. Hey, we can contain that. We can cut them off here, cut them off there. But if they come up on the shore by mass loads, how do we contain that? How do we stop that? We're not used to coming down and fighting them on the beachheads. So it's a whole different way of fighting now. And then we go and we look at, verse 31, where it tells us in verse 31, it says, they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. What we're looking at is that is the full corruption in sacred places, meaning that he has no regard for anything of God. See, this is where we're introducing now the Antichrist. We're talking about there's no regard, there's nothing whatsoever to think about things of God, things that are great. And it goes on, he says in verse 32, it says, with flattery he will corrupt those who have violated the covenant. But the people who know their God will firmly resist him. That's talking about really those who truly stand against the things that the land is trying to make right or just. Because what he says, he'll use flattery. Man, you Christians are some good people. Just follow me. Do what I say. And they're going to look at this and say, no, this is not right. This is wrong what's happening. Anybody have any questions, any thoughts? Okay. And again, as you know, we talk about, this is actually speaking of the Great Tribulation, the end times. This is talking about that particular part is the post-rapture is what it's speaking of. Now we're going to get into even more. Somebody let's go ahead and read 36 through 45, and that should get us through to the end of chapter 11, 36 to 45.
The king will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed. For what has been determined must take place. He will show no regard for the gods of his ancestors or for the one desired by women, nor will he regard any god, but will exalt himself above them all. Instead of them, he will honor a god of fortresses, a god unknown to his ancestors. He will honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He will attack the mightiest fortresses with the help of a foreign god and will greatly honor those who acknowledge him. He will make them rulers over many people and will distribute the land at a price. At the time of the end, the king of the south will engage him in battle, and the king of the north will storm out against him with chariots and cavalry and a great fleet of ships. He will invade many countries and sweep through them like a flood. He will also invade the beautiful land. Many countries will fall, but Edom, Moab, and the leaders of Ammon will be delivered from his hand. He will extend his power over many countries. Egypt will not escape. He will gain control of the treasures of gold and silver and all the riches of Egypt, with the Libyans and Cushites in submission. But reports from the east and the north will alarm him, and he will set out in a great rage to destroy and annihilate many. He will pitch his royal tents between the seas at the beautiful holy mountain. Yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him.
So you see, this is cranked up, and that's why, again, that's why you look at Daniel. This is because it had to start off with talking about all these different wars, because there is a spiritual war that is coming. It's these are things to come. This is the Antichrist and its full glory, and it talks here about, you know, the I want to just go back and just highlight just a few things because I want to finish up with 12. Yeah, because we're right here in verse 36, he says, the king will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. You hear that? I mean, that's deep. So again, with flattery, he's bought other people who once believed this, hey, you know, but don't line up with him. But there are going to be those who are, no matter what happens, are going to stand there and say, no, I'm rejecting this. And then he goes into this, and then, okay, and then the other part is where we come down to verse 39, toward the end of 39, it says, he will make them rulers over many people and will distribute the land at a price. That land that is spoken of there is Israel. Okay? That's what this is speaking of, is Israel. And then, because then he goes in verse 41, he says, he will also invade the beautiful land, which we know is what? Israel. Okay? And then he comes down. Now, here's the part that we see again, all these different people groups and dynamics and the area and the region where things are happening. Because what does he say in verse 43? He says, he will gain control of the treasures of the gold and silver and all the riches of what? Egypt with the Libyans and the Cushites. Now you have to understand, that's all the northern Africa region. And we know that the Cushites, that's actually talking about Sudan. That's coming down, because if you look at a map, geographically, you have Libya, then you drop right down. All that is talking about the northern Africa piece, and then we are looking at the Greek piece, all that region in there, then going all the way over to, which is modern-day Iraq, Iran, all of that. And this is why I try to, like, in my brain, again, and I want you to understand when I say this, I have no clue, first thing, of exactly where the return of Christ will take place. But I can tell you from what I read, it ain't here. That I can tell you. It is not here. And all of those I see engaged in this. And I was telling Andy, even in my conversation earlier today, I said, you know, to me it would make sense where the beginning is where the end will be. Well, here we go right here. Let's just look at this. It says in verse 45, he will pitch his royal tent between the sea and the beautiful holy mountain. What's the beautiful holy mountain? Mount Zion. That's the beautiful holy mountain. It's the centerpiece, and it's God's presence. It's Mount Zion. So we see it's like if we just would. That's why I'm telling you, we can't just gloss over some of these things and just take them as a reading. We have to really study to see these things for what they are, because it helps us. Because, again, I'm not sitting here saying I know exactly when Jesus is coming. I know exactly where he's going to appear. But I can tell you when people start saying things, I can say, you're lying, and you are not well read. Because what it does, it gives you the confidence to know an untruth when you hear it. You know it for a fact, this is not true. This is not accurate. And then you don't fall for these things that people are saying, because Scripture says contrary to that. So let's look at, we're going to jump right into, say again? Yes.
You want to make a comment?
Yes.
Just confirms what you said, because in all these scriptures, it never identifies who these people are. Just he. He destroyed, he attacked, he pitched a tent, he did this to this one, and he did this one back to that one, and it never identifies who they are.
Right.
They just people at war, just going
Right.
back and forth.
Right.
Him, his daughter, his kingdom, his son.
Right.
Who are they?
Right.
And they serving different gods.
Right.
So nobody really has any identity other than there's a person at war with another
Right.
person.
Right.
So-
And that's what, again, this is Gabriel speaking. He's saying this, and you know the beauty of it is, Pastor Rich, is that like historically, like, because I honestly I didn't have we didn't have time, and I didn't want to bore us all to death, but you could go back and trace certain names to these kings at that time. You know what I'm saying? But there is, I don't want to use the word irrelevant, but they're gone. They're history. They're smoked. You know, because God, again, is not going to be mocked. And these things have already come to pass. And the angel, if you look at this, the angel's not giving names. He's telling them north, south. So there's an understanding that these things are going to continue to turn over, and there's going to be continued war between these two. You see what I'm saying? So that's the important part that the angel's trying to get through to us. And to, like you said, you know, the names, I don't want to say it again, I'm trying to mark my words. The names, historically the names can be important. But for the plan of God, they're purposeless. You see what I'm saying? Because they've all dissipated. They're all washed off the scene. Now these are things to come. These are actions that are transpiring because, again, there's no name to the Antichrist in this point. Why? Because we don't know. These things we're going to be dealing with our times until the end times. So that's what we have here. Any thoughts, any questions before we jump into 12? Okay, let's go ahead and jump into 12. Let's get 1 through 4. Got a green light?
Thank you. At that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, roll up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end. Many will go here and there to increase knowledge.
So we see clearly, this is clearly speaking of end times. I just so appreciate the fact that, well, like, just to bring the point to what Pastor Richard was saying, is that we see two names that are constantly being seen here, is Michael and Gabriel. Okay, because we want to talk about names, we're talking about real power. Okay, and then what I so appreciate about this is that in this particular passage, in verse 2, it says, multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will wake. It says, and some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Ooh.
Okay, this is going to get controversial, but do you believe that this provides some support for a mid-tribulation?
You know, I have it in my notes, actually. Here's what you have, Kanite, and here's the thing. I will say this. I would not argue with any, because I actually have in my notes here, like when you go from verse 1 down to 2, where just right in there, that there are good theologians who believe that it is pre-tribulation, meaning that Christians will not have to go through any of this. Okay, remember we talked about post, mid, and pre, right? We talked about all that. And matter of fact, the next portion of Daniel will line us up and help us out a little bit with your answer. But we talked about it, but there are good theologians who believe that Christians will not see any of this, those who are firm believers. And then you have those who believe that you will go through the first portion of the tribulations, which is the 3.5 years, and then there's a rapture. Then there are those who believe that we will have to endure all of this, and at the end of the 7 years, then there's the rapture. So I wouldn't argue or differ with anybody that has any of those beliefs out of those three. You know, I just would say this: I'll be gone. You want to stay? If that like I said, that's my belief, is that I'll be gone. Okay, I'm gonna go with the first group, the pre. Okay, that's my belief. But again, there are those who, and I would not debate or argue anybody, because what the concept is that all three believe that we will go, and they believe that they will, no matter what happens, they will stand in faith and go. You know, because again, that aligns back to Revelations, where it speaks about the 144,000, which is the representation of the 12 tribes broken down, and that they would be a representation of those 12 tribes here still on earth that will stand firm and be great witnesses during those times. There's so much in this that I don't think anybody has got this 100% right. That's why I'm trying to give as much information as I can, where we can, and this is one where I would say, hey, I would agree to differ. I would agree to disagree. You see what I mean? This wouldn't even be a heaven and hell situation. This wouldn't be where I'm freaking out over it. No, man, hey, bro, look, if you want to stay mid, post, God bless you. I'm just telling you now, what I'm believing is, I'm on the first flight. right. So, I mean, again, but that's a great question, though, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I actually had it in my notes, and that's a good question, Kenita. So let's jump into 5 through 8, and we're getting close.
Then I, Daniel, looked, and there before me stood 2 others, one on this bank of the river and one on the opposite bank. One of them said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled? The man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left hand toward heaven, and I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, it will be for a time, times and a half a time. When the power of the holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed. You want me to continue?
Yeah, let's hit 8, please.
I heard but did not understand. So I asked, my Lord, what will the outcome of all this be?
See, that's what I so appreciate about Daniel. He said, I heard, but I don't understand. So again, you have to please work with me on this. You have to garner and understand that we have a insight that Daniel did not. These are things that were spoken of futuristically in all of this, and putting it in the context. We have the ability to have the actual Bible. We have the ability to have the New Testament. We have the ability to see Christ. All these things we have the ability to see. Daniel did not have that. So that's why we can have a little bit more understanding. It doesn't mean that we have a better, but it means we have a little bit more of a glimpse of what's taken place, because we can see certain things that have already happened and passed on, okay? But one thing that I wanted to make clear is that, again, there are some things, and I tell you this only because if you do a study or you read it yourself or you're talking with someone, you'll be educated to know that some people believe that one of the people, especially the one who was standing above the water and raised their hands, they believe that, again, that might be a Christophany. They believe that might have been, Christ. But then there is a stronger point that they believe that they were both angelic beings, okay? So it could be both angelic. Again, these are things I wouldn't split hairs over. If you're ever in a conversation with someone about that and they're just dead set on it being this way, hey, I could agree with you. I wouldn't even have an argument with you. It would just be, bro, honestly, I don't really know. And the reason why I say I don't really know, because I can read verse 8. I heard, but I did not understand. Okay? That's what Daniel said. And it was already given to him by, we know Gabriel's speaking through. So there are certain pieces of this, even though he's got this vision and being explained very well in detail, it's still a little bit murky. Why? Because these are things to come, okay? Let's look at 9 through 13.
Okay.
But he said, Go now, Daniel, for what I have said is for the time of the end. Many will be purified, cleansed, and refined by the trials. But the wicked will continue in their wickedness, and none of them will understand. Only those who are wise will know what it means. From the time the daily sacrifice is taken away and the sacrilegious object that causes desecration is set up to be worshipped, there will be 1,290 days. And blessed are those who wait and remain until the end of the 1335 days. As for you, go your way until the end. You will rest. And then at the end of the days, you will rise again to receive the inheritance set aside for you.
That's beautiful. He let him know. He's basically telling Daniel, pack up your bag. I'm done talking to you. This is all over with. Pack your bag up. Ain't no more to be. You can ask all the questions you want. There's no more answers. It's like the press conference. Okay, we're wrapping up. We're going. Okay? There's no more questions to be answered here. Pack up, go. But the thing of it is that if you add this up, which is so cool, because again, we're talking about, as what Kenite was talking about earlier, which is the mid-tribulation. This is actually what it's defining here when it talks about the 1,290 days. When we do the math on this, it gives us 7 years, just a few more days past 7 years. If you calculate how many days are in 7 years, and then you calculate how many days these are right here, it comes out to like 7 years and so many days. So we see the clarity of the end times. We see the clarity of what we call the tribulation period, which is the pre-tribulation, the mid-tribulation, and post-tribulation is laid out right here, okay? Now, it depends on how a person wishes to interpret this as to when they go. Again, like I said, I'm taking that first flight, okay? But I think we see clearly here that this has fulfilled and given us such great biblical prophecy that brings us to the point that we're looking at, reading this right here, not what we see out here in our news or in the world. I'm talking about scripture-wise, we're reading end times. You understand that? This is what is so beautiful, and that's why Daniel is so relevant when it pertains to the book of Revelations. They almost, that's too strong of a term that they marry each other, but they do mirror certain pieces, I could say that, mirror each other. So the book of Daniel is very much there that when we look at Revelations, some of the things in Daniel are actually explained then, where we get a little bit more clarity. And even in Revelations, the water's still murky, okay? Because the greatest of theologians will differ on certain things, but they will all come to the unification of saying, this is not heaven or hell that we're dividing over here. It's just my interpretation that we're dividing over. We're not even coming close to saying anything that would desecrate the name of Christ. It's just that the interpretation is a little different on certain things. Any final questions on this? Yes. Yes, it does. Because like I said, and there are other scriptural, there are other books, like even you look at Isaiah, I mean, his prophecies, a lot of those tie into some of the things to come, but like when you look at Daniel, is so defining. That's what makes Daniel and Revelations so strong with each other, because like I said, Daniel's straight up speaking of end times, man. And he ain't even playing with it, you know.
I think what I love too in the NIV in verse 9, when Gabriel tells Daniel, go your way, Daniel, because the words are rolled up and sealed until the end, until the time of the end. So he's like, look, it's rolled up, it's sealed,
Yeah.
it is what it is, and it cannot be changed.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you think or somebody else thinks, God knows.
Yeah.
And
Because
at that time, I mean, even Jesus had said, no man knows the end but God.
Because
So,
like you said, Vicky, he's responding to
Yeah.
Daniel's comment.
Yeah.
He says, I heard, he said, but I do not understand. So I asked, my Lord, what will the outcome of all this be? And his
Yeah.
answer was, bro,
Yeah,
it's all rolled up.
it's all
Okay?
rolled up. It's sealed.
I done told you all you need to know.
No, that's it.
You got to go, babe. And he tells it, but the beauty of it is, he concludes with letting him know. He says to him, he says, you will rest, and then at the end of the days, you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance. Wow. That's beautiful, man. Yeah, he's basically telling him, your ticket's already punched, man. Your ticket's already punched. That's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. Have you all enjoyed Daniel? Yeah. It's a lot to cover, a lot to understand, but it is actually a wonderful book in the Bible. And it takes mystery away from, because you have so many people who don't want to read Revelations because they're afraid of it. There's nothing in God's word for the Christian to be afraid of. It takes the mystery away from it, because what we see is the favor of God upon his people when we read these types of books. So, everybody good? All right. God bless you.